Hello and welcome back to my channel for another quick gameplay. I wanted to upload this just because I thought it was a very cool control mirror. I am playing Wydwen the Biting Gale. I know I haven't played the deck in a while. I hope you guys enjoy a little bit of the Dimir control action. Against Grand Arbiter Augustin IV. Premier Azorius control taxes all of your opponent's spells, and white or blue spells you cast cost one less, and that ability stacks for a blue/white spell. So pretty cool. The issue that I have with Grand Arbiter is that it doesn't create any value on its own. All it does is provide this mana benefit/tax advantage to you, but it doesn't actually generate advantage or provide a decent clock because it has no evasion. While Wydwen does, I consider Wydwen a clock, whereas Grand Arbiter is not. I have a little bit of a slow hand. I have a turn to Merchant Scroll into presumably most likely mana drain, so that way I can try to power out this cruise and get out of the hand. I have Mishra's Factory to beat down if I want to, but I do have my mana for Wydwen, and I have a fantastic color, so even though it's a little bit slow against Grand Arbiter, I'd rather keep a mana strong hand than go a little bit light, because if I'm mulliganing this for a better hand, and I hit like a 2-land plus artifact, like 2-drop artifact or something, I could just be locked out of the game before I can actually win, or try to do anything. So I'm definitely going to keep this hand. My opponent, I think, keeps theirs as well. Yes. Alright. So I'm going to flash the Water Grave, bluff the spell. I'm going to Water Grave because that's what I flashed into Merchant Scroll. I'm going to go get the Drain. So I click through the deck there. I will tutor again during the gameplay, so you'll get to see some more. My opponent led Tapland into Island, so Tapland immediately tells me that it's not that strong of a Grand Arbiter deck. It's not as good as it could be. So I pick up Counterspell, that's pretty useful. I'm going to put the Mishra's Factory down here, though, because I want to get rid of the summoning sickness on Mishra's Factory as soon as possible if I want to start attacking. I'm going to clear my main step, and I decided to sit on the mana drain this turn just because I didn't want my opponent to be able to go land, Sol Ring, Grand Arbiter. Instead of playing the Ashiok here. I pick up a Venser, and this turn I'm going to wait again, and now I have the ability, if I don't have to counter, to play Wydwen. Let me pull her back up, there we go, if I need to. My opponent goes with Grand Abolisher. Alright, so I'm going to flash the mana drain here, and this was a little greedy of me. I should have done the counterspell and just saved the mana drain for specifically Grand Arbiter, but I got a little too focused on the fact that I would have a 1, 2, 3, 4, 3, 4, 5, no, 6, 7. I think I would have had cruise mana next turn if I top decked a land. I just got greedy here, and I didn't really need that mana off the Abolisher, and my opponent gets the Dispel. I guess there's something to be said for using the known information instead of the unknown information. So now my opponent thinks I don't have any counterspells, but they have a Resolve Grand Abolisher, so it's not like it matters. I pick up Island, which is pretty helpful here. I'm going to Ashiok and tick up, and I double-checked Abolisher. During your turn, your opponents can't cast spells or activate abilities of artifacts, creatures, and enchantments. I can, however, activate lands, and I pseudo-get my opponent here with this. So Grand Abolisher crashes in. I'm going to activate my Mishra's Factory because it's a land. Now I can no longer activate it to tap and pump itself because I can't activate creature abilities, but I can try to trade it with this Grand Abolisher, which is an absolutely trade I'm willing to make. And my opponent decides they don't want me doing that, so they're going to path, but they don't path in the attack step, they path in block, so I got my block through, so Ashiok takes no damage here, which is fantastic. And I had Frost Titan previously off Ashiok's. So Grand Arbiter comes down. I'm going to tick Ashiok up to 7, hit Consecrated Sphinx. Well, that's a little greedy of me. I'm going to Venser the Grand Arbiter just for tempo here. Venser also blocks the Grand Abolisher in trades, so I know this will Stonewall Abolisher for a sec. My opponent clearly values their Abolisher more than getting damage on Ashiok right now, or trading for a spent Venser at this point. My opponent just ships the turn back, and I'm totally fine with that. So I think for sec, I decided to go for Runechanter Spike. I tap a little bit much because I forgot Arbiter wasn't in play. Conveniently, I was planning to equip it anyway. And I -6 on Ashiok. Now this is an interesting decision that I thought about for about a minute or so. I have 2 6-drops here. I can either get Consecrated Sphinx, I'll talk about first. Whenever our opponent draws a card, you may draw 2 cards. Absolutely amazing 6-drop. The drawback of it is that if I put Consecrated Sphinx into play and my opponent has a way to bounce it, they've now drawn Consecrated Sphinx, and I really don't want them to have that, especially with Grand Abolisher in play, because I'll have no way to stop it from coming down. So a bounce spell on the Sphinx absolutely wrecks my game. As much as Sphinx might be good for me, I kind of like leaving it in exile indefinitely, and also having there's a threat that my opponent has to keep in mind that if Ashiok hits 6, I can go get the Sphinx. Frostbite, on the other hand, has built-in protection from 1-mana removal spells in white, like swords. My opponent spent their path already. But spells cost more, and it also taxes my opponent mana, which I don't mind doing because Grand Abolisher gives them a free... So at least this keeps them playing the game a little bit fairly. It's also a slightly bigger clock, albeit not evasive, but I care less about them spending a bounce spell on Frost Titan than I do on Consecrated Sphinx. While Frost Titan would be bad for me if my opponent had it in play, it's going to do less damage to me if they somehow get back control of it back to them. So I go for the Frost Titan here instead of the much greedier Consecrated Sphinx play, just because of the outside chance that I lose control of this Sphinx before the game ends, and I lose the game because of it. So I'm going to Frost Titan Grand Abolisher, guarantee that Ashiok, or try to guarantee that Ashiok will survive another round, so I can take her back up. Or, yeah, I guess her. I'm not sure, actually. So I can take Ashiok back up. My opponent taps, untaps, plays Hollowed Barrel, put all creatures to the bottom. That's fine. So, conveniently, if I had gone for the Sphinx, I would have gotten 2 cards for free that turn, instead of tapping down the creature. Oh well. And I'm sure they would have played Hollowed Barrel if I had gone for Sphinx. There's no way they would let me have Sphinx. I pick up a land, pretty useful. I eat some more cards, get a Phyrexian Metamorph, and I'm going to ship the turn. And I'm shipping here because now that the Abolisher is gone, I have Wydwen plus Counterspell backup, or Wydwen plus Wydwen protection if they have targeted removal. It looks like they don't, so Wydwen resolves. And I'm going to equip the Runechanter's Pike and go to a clock. And this is really why I take that Merchant Scroll line early, is because of cards like Runechanter's Pike in the deck, well, specifically Runechanter's Pike. Filling up this yard, in addition to the crews that I've added since my last edit, is that filling up this yard means Wydwen can be a faster clock, or you get more advantage out of some of these cards. So even though Merchant Scrolls is sometimes good for sandbagging late game, blowing it early just to go get protection and flash the protection, let your opponents know that they have it and that they have to play around it, is A, useful because they're less likely to be doing the most broken things on the first couple turns. So you have a better chance of going shields down for a turn to get that drain, instead of trying to arrange a turn where you can spend 3 blue and 1 colorless to both Merchant Scroll and have drain up. It also means Wydwen is a 5-power clock with Runechanter's Pike immediately, which is fantastic. I hit Glenalandra. I'm never going to put that into play off Ashiok, so at least it's out of my opponent's deck. My opponent goes for End Step to Fairy, and I'm going to absolutely counterspell that. Definitely a very controlling deck, but they don't want other people to play control against them, it would seem. So they have the deck to hate out other control decks. They tap and untap some mana. Here comes Grand Arbiter, back to the party. That is fine. And there was a cruise. They overtapped a little bit. And drop a Lightning Greaves onto Grand Arbiter. Well, that's fine. Alright, Ashiok crashes down to 3. And they've clearly realized that this Ashiok is going to kill them. It's giving me so much... Think how much advantage this has gotten me. Alright, so it's gained me 2 life. It's exiled 13 cards out of their deck. Dismiss Swords to Plowshares. Oh, if I was paying attention, even during the game, I would have realized that Swords is gone. Maze of Ith, which would have been amazing against Wydwen. Omniscience, Venser, Planeswalker. Let's see, those were delved away. Yeah, so Venser, Omniscience, Nip at lands, removal, one of the better 4-mana counterspells. Like, it's just such a good card that Ashiok can do. Oh, and probably this Plains as well. And so it's just so much incredible pressure, and not to mention these 3 cards as well. It just gets out of hand that my opponent knows they have to deal with it, because if I ever hit 10, I'm going to twist their hand away, eat their yard, and that's something that control deck cannot abide in any way. And they have no removal for, which is absolutely fantastic. I'm going to play a land. I'm going to thirst on main step, and I decided to discard 2 here. The reason I discard 2 is because I think this Mystical Tutor might be able to win me the game here. I know I've domed my opponent for 5 so far. I counterspelled since then, and I'm going to thirst, so I'm going to dome them for 7 here. Mystical Tutor next turn will put Wydwen to 8, meaning my opponent's at 20. I need to put one other instant or sorcery in my yard, which I can go and get with Mystical Tutor, to turn Wydwen into a game-winning spell, game-winning attack. As long as if my opponent taps out, I can Mystical on upkeep, which you'll see I have the stop set there, which I can turn off because I don't need them normally. I can Mystical on upkeep for any spell that I can cast, and then win the game off of that. So I'm going to pitch Vendilion Click because I don't see myself casting it for the remainder of this game, and Strip Mine. Its usefulness has long since passed at this much mana. And I'm going to play the Baleful Strix out because it cycles itself. It might hit me a spell. And it also blocks Grand Arbiter. So they might leave Grand Arbiter back, they might trade Grand Arbiter off, or they're going to prioritize killing the Strix so that way they can get in with Grand Arbiter against Ashiok. And that's my whole plan here. If I can make my opponent think that Ashiok is the real threat, they're not going to value Wydwen's threat. Of the 12 commander damage that they're currently at. They don't think that I can kill them from this point, while in fact I can. I can get any bounce spell, bounce my own, hell, bounce Ashiok, bounce Lightning Greaves if I get Psych Rift, whatever. Nope, Void's Vapor Snag wouldn't do it. I think that's what I pick up here as my draw. Nope, I pick up Mana Crypt. Alright. So even better, that gives me options. This is pseudo Sol Ring with Grand Arbiter in play. Still mana positive. My opponent goes with Ponder into Big Spell. Elish Norn. Well, damn. Alright, so that pumps Grand Arbiter up to 4, crashes into Ashiok, kills my Baleful Strix, and reduces Wydwen's power. Now, fortunately, my opponent misses a line here. They forgot to move Lightning Grooves onto Elish Norn. Let me jump through the turn. Grand Arbiter hits Ashiok. If they had moved Greaves onto Elish Norn, first of all, Elish Norn would have been able to hit Ashiok as well if they really cared about killing Ashiok. Elish Norn has Vigilance, not that it matters. I had no mana open, so they're not even playing around Snuff Out because I can't cast Snuff Out without mana because of Grand Arbiter. There was no reason to not move Greaves over to Elish Norn. At least hit Ashiok off the table, and then move it back if you care that much about Grand Arbiter. Really, my opponent should be prioritizing Elish Norn here, and this was their mistake. And you'll see why in a moment. So I set my stop on my upkeep, and I don't want to jump through my deck here. There we go. So that way you guys can pause the video and take a look at my current list. I added in Tamir the Moon Sage, Treasure Cruise. I cut out the Sky Diamond. I moved in, what else was it? Like a 2 or 3 drop, I believe. I can't think off the top of my head. I have the list somewhere. I think it might have been a tutor or another piece of control, perhaps. So, yeah, whatever I replaced Sky Diamond with was at the same CMC. So, this is the current list in its iteration, and I've been enjoying it so far. So there is one fantastic card here. I'll give you a sec to try and figure out what it is if you haven't yet. And I decided to go for Mystic Confluence, and I have exactly enough mana to do it. Now I could play around something like Mana Leak or what's the card? Condescend, the card in my deck. Wow. So I decided not to play around them because honestly, if my opponent has Condescend, they're going to get me either way because it's 1, 2. I would have this Taps for 2 because it turns into Crypt. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I have 6 mana. So if I Mystical for... nope, I could have gotten Vapor Snag. Yeah. So I could have Vapor Snagged Elesh Norn as well, which would have left me 5 open. There's no way they're countering me from there without actual hard counterspell. But I wanted to go for the Confluence just because I enjoy the spell. Also, it's more of a must counter immediately spell, so I'll know before I even go into combat if they got it or not. So let me jump through this. There we go. Confluence to the top of my deck. Draw the Confluence, play the Crypt, tap out Confluence, bounce, draw, pick up the Vapor Snag that I was talking about. I think that's when I realized that I still had this in my deck, and this would have been a better line and play around more spells. Even if they had a counterspell, it would have meant that I had Treasure Cruise post-combat, because Wydwen would have hit for 7 this turn, put my opponent's 19 commander. I would have had Cruise, even with the tax, because Cruise can delve away that tax, land, and I would have had mana open to activate Wydwen's ability if I needed to, which would have been a much better play. This would also lose my opponent a life, which is mildly relevant. But that is the end of the game, just like that. No removal. I mean, I knew Elesh Norn was in their hand. I don't think there was a way that they could have played that last turn that would have mattered. If anything, if they didn't hit Ashiok because I kept the Strix up, they didn't play Elesh Norn, I would have gone for the protection -4 to Ashiok to protect my pseudo combo kill. And taken the Glenelendra, just because I would only need 1 counterspell to win the game. Overall, I thought I played this game very tight. It was a ton of fun playing against another control deck that doesn't scoop off early games, but just wanted to showcase how powerful any decent Planeswalker is in a control matchup where for how many turns was it uninterrupted? Starts at a 3, so 4, 5, 7. Then down to 1, then up to 5, then down to 3, and then up to 5 again. It would have been this turn. So, like 6 turns uninterrupted, I believe. I think I played Ashiok on turn 5, yeah. So 6 turns uninterrupted Planeswalker that they couldn't answer. Does so much incredible work. I got so many good cards out of my opponent's deck, including Mana Vault, Karn Liberated, more lands, Sequin Coast, not that it mattered. Hope you guys enjoy the gameplay. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share the video to anyone you think might enjoy, and I'll see you on the next one. Let me know in the comments down below what misplays I made, how you would have made the game a little bit, played a little bit better, besides the focus on Mystic Confluence instead of being able to leave out Protection plus Cruise. Alright, see you in the next one, guys.